Hello, and welcome to my pitch for Arachno-Morph, a 3D adventure game where players control a spider who can increase its size with power-ups to defeat enemies, but is powerless against these enemies while in its normal size, and must sneak around to find power-ups or avoid enemies while in this state. Each level begins with the spider in its normal state. The power-ups are used to increase the spider's size and can be found throughout each level and can be stored for later use. They each have time limits for their effects, and there are 3 tiers for the power-ups, each with different time limits for the effect. Longer lasting tiers would of course be rare. Using these power-ups is what will ultimately allow for progression, as they are needed to defeat enemies and can allow for access to new areas where an objective might be. If a player is engaging in combat and runs out of power-ups, they would revert back to the normal state, but then that would make it easier to escape into a smaller area the enemies cannot reach, and the player could search for more power-ups. As for the combat, power-ups are required to engage as the spider is too small to stand a chance, as when in the normal state, players' health is very low. There are 3 attacks to use while in combat. There is a pincer attack, a stabbing attack, and a web blast to stun an enemy. The enemies will be colored to show threat level and difficulty. Completing a level is done by finding a way to advance through an obstacle, which could involve solving a puzzle or clearing an area of enemies. Some levels will require all enemies to be defeated, while some will not require that any be defeated. Some puzzles will require the use of growing and shrinking to solve them. This makes for each level to play differently and allow for different strategies to be used. The antagonizing forces in the game are the enemy AI that need to either be defeated or avoided. The spider has low health when normal size, so it takes very little damage to kill the spider in this form. Alternatively, when powered up, the spider's health will be increased as long as the power-up is active. The other antagonizing force is time. Since the size power-up is limited to a timer, players are fighting against this timer when engaging in combat or exploring areas. Arachno-Morph is set in a third-person perspective, and it focuses on the use of the growing ability to engage in combat and includes light exploration and puzzle elements. The goal of the game is to make it back to where the spider's web was when she was washed away by a storm. The best way to describe Arachno-Morph is that it is a cross between Super Mario and Spider-Man. The game gives the player power-ups like in Super Mario, with similar movement and combat mechanics found in Spider-Man. The big difference here is that the game gives the player the choice of when to use their power-ups by means of collecting and using them when needed. The biggest risk I can see facing during development is the amount of animation work the spider model would require. There would be a lot of moving parts, and that could potentially clog up development time trying to make them appear accurate. Potential fix for this would be to determine a fitting art style for the game. If it were one that did not focus much on smaller details, then the team and I would have much more leeway with the animations appearing accurate. Another major risk I can see is the complexity of the scripts needed for the functionality of the game. With multiple enemies and condition-based objectives, the amount of scripts running at once will be a concern when it comes to performance. The best fix I could see is for the team and I to develop a state machine to account for the behavior of both the AI and the playable character. There would also have to be multiple scenes to design and develop. This is going to call for much more level design and art requirements. This would also require longer playtesting sessions. I can see a potential fix for this would be to make the levels shorter or only have a smaller amount of normal size levels to reduce time spent on levels during production. I hope you have enjoyed my pitch for Arachno-Morph, and I thank you for watching.